Okay, so now we'll start off with the design part. So now that we actually understood what color schemes are, we'll start off with the designing itself. So we'll head over to File, New, and I'll set the document size to 1920 by 1080. Let me just rename this to Flat Vector Design, and I'll call it test or something. Okay, so I'm keeping the resolution to 300. If you are going to upload it in a social media platform, then keep it to somewhere around 300 to 400. But if you're just drawing it out, yeah, then you can just keep it to the default 72 value. So just make sure it's 372, whichever works for you. The color mode, set it to default RGB color. Background contents can be anything at all. It can be transparent background color, which is black, or white, which is white. So I'm just going to click on OK. Let me just put it on to transparent itself. So now that we have the canvas here, we'll start off with the really simple part, which is doing the lines inside the planet. So if you did see the reference of the planet in the of the entire image, you can see we are having some lines inside the planet. So that is what we're going to do first. So now that we actually have a new layer here, if you don't have one, if you don't actually see something like this, you can just click on this icon here and it's going to bring up a new layer. So now that we have the first layer here, I'm going to go to my shape tool and I'll bring up my rounded rectangle tool. So now that we have this, I'm just going to zoom in a bit, and I'm just going to make a really thin or a really small in terms of the width, but then for the height I'm going to keep it to something really big. So make sure that it's at least this big. Don't make it really small, because once you put it inside the plane, we can actually run into situations where we want longer sized lines. So just make sure that they're big enough. I'll just do that, and it's gonna give me a stroke here. So if you see here, these are the panels where you can control some stuff. So I'll just put this to 0. So now we're getting rid of that white line there. So if you just increase it, it's going to give us the stroke. If you don't know what stroke is basically an outer line for whatever shape you've done. Okay, so we're done with the first shape here. But then if you see here, we are in a shape layer still. So if it's still in a shape layer, you can still come over here and edit these settings. But if I right click and if I go over and rasterize it, it's going to make it an image. So if I right click and click on rasterize layer, you can no longer edit it. So it's an image now. It's just a PNG image or whatever it is. It's just an image. So you no longer have control over it. So just make sure that before right clicking and rasterizing it, make sure that you're done with all these settings you actually wanted to. So now that we have the first line, I'm going to duplicate this line and I'm going to bring it down here. So for the first one, let me just create a new layer, and I'll just set the background colors to black. Now the fillers, you can go over to the paint bucket tool. Where is it? This one? No, this one it is. And I'll just fill it. So now we can actually see it much more easier. So it's much easier for our eyes to actually see the lines itself. So now that we have the second one, the second line here, I'm going to make a cut here. So if I zoom in, to zoom in, Alt and scroll, that's how you zoom in. I'm just going to hide this. If you click on this little hide there, it's going to actually hide the layer itself. I'm going to hold on shift and start from the very top and make a clean little circle here, just like something like this. I'll do that and leave the mouse button there, and I'll click on delete on the keyboard to delete that space over there. So I'll just now take an eraser where it is right here. This is the eraser tool, and you can just erase that part off. So now we have that little cut you actually saw inside of those planets. So now we have a full circle one, and then we have this little cut over here. So now what I'll duplicate these two layers. So to select multiple layers, you can hold on shift and select the second layer as well. I'll do Control J to duplicate them, and I'll just drag them beneath, so it's beneath the black layer, and now we cannot see it. So how this actually works is if you move this above, so let me just move this over here, and let me just reorder this. So now if I pull this layer, which is this one here, this little line, if I pull it beneath the black layer, it's going to be hidden because it's underneath the layer. So if I pull it over the black layer, it's going to be revealed. So that's something you need to keep in mind. So just make sure that the layers you're actually working on is in the right order, or it will not work. So I've duplicated these two. I'll just rename this one, I'll rename this two. And now what we'll do is I'll do a few duplicates of this. Okay, I'll do a few duplicates of these, and I'll just duplicate that one last time. So now that we have these duplicated ones, I'm going to create a few lines, a few of these more lines, and it's going to be a long version of it. So let me just do it for you. Now let me just do it first so that you actually can understand what I'm actually telling. So if I go over here and if I pull this down, the layer that I actually duplicated, if I pull that down, you can actually see we are having the design that we actually wanted to have. So if I pull this here, then you can actually see we're having some variation in the entire design. So for the first one, I'm going to make sure that I'm actually doing in some really long lines, and then for the next few ones I'll do maybe a medium one and then a really small one in the end. So that's how the order is going to go. So I'll just do the first one and then probably fast forward the other two, because it's just the same procedure, just as how you did it before. So if you're done with the first one, you should see these are done. So what we'll do is I'll just hold on shift and select all the layers. So if you hold on shift and select the top layer by selecting the bottom one, it's going to select everything in between. Now what I'll do is I'll hold on Control and E. So that's the shortcut. But if you don't have it, you can right click and click on merge layers. So now we have it all in a single layer. So now if I just hide it, you can just move it. So before you merge it out, make sure that it is in the right order and you cannot change it later on. Okay, so just make sure that you're remembering it and it's looking good enough. So I'll just rename this one. Now why did I duplicate those two lines here is because I want to do variations in the entire lines here. So I'm going to do Control J now over here. I have the duplicates of these two lines. I'll pull this over on the top so that we can actually see them. I'll hide the layer that I actually worked on, these long line ones, and now we're having these again. Okay, so this is just for backup purposes so that I can actually do it again instead of going into right clicking here and doing it all over again. I can just come over and do that really easily. So I'll just pull this here. This one is going to be medium one. So I'll duplicate this 5 times. I'll duplicate this 5 times as well. In fact, this one for 6 times. And now, if I move this, I'll create medium lines this time. I'll not do it fat ones. So I'll just fast forward this because it's going to be the same procedure as what I did before. Just duplicating them and just dragging them down so that we're actually reordering them in the right order. So let me just fast forward this. Okay, so now we're done with the 3 designs here. It's pretty much the same thing, just reordering them for the right size. So if I just drag them all out, you can see we're having 3 variations in the entire design itself. So this is the first one is with the small lines, the second one is with medium lines, and the third one is with the long lines. So I did 3 variations of these. So I'll just hide these and we'll start off with the first planet itself. So I'll create a new layer. Okay, I'll put this on top of everything and I'll just call it, I'll just keep it to the default. So now what we can do is we can take the elliptical marquee tool, or you can go for the ellipse tool here as well. So we'll go in to this one itself and I'll just hold on shift, and if I drag it now, we're having a perfect circle. If I leave shift, it's actually going to do this random without any aspect ratio kind of circle, which we don't want. But if you hold on shift, we're having this perfect little circle. So I'll just keep a planet with something of a size like this. So I'll just do that. But if you see here, we're not seeing anything working at all, because now this fill here, fill is basically the color, it's going to fill inside of the selection we made. If I go in and change it to white, it's actually going to do that right over here. That's something we want. So if I just move it down here, so now it's still a shape layer, so we can just go into this again and still adjust this. So if I go over to maybe LS stroke and give it a bit of stroke, you can see that it's actually giving us that stroke here, but we don't want it in our case. We'll just keep it to black, and I'll just lower that down. So we're having the first little circle here. This is going to be our very first planet. Okay, now what we'll do is I'll right click and click on rasterize image because I really don't want to edit it at all. And now I'll pull the planet, the circle that I made, beneath everything, so it's right above the black layer there, and now enable these 3 here. So what we'll do is go on Control T, select everything, select all the 3 layers that we actually did, Control T, and now we're having this little resize button, a window here. This is the free transform tool where we can actually size it up and size it down. So now again, if I hold on shift, it's actually going to maintain the aspect ratio. So I'll hold on shift and I'll just size it down to something like this, so that once we put it inside the planet, it shouldn't look really big and awkward. So that's the reason why I'm just doing that. So I'll just I'll just hide these two, and I'll work with this one here. So what we'll do is I'll fill the ellipse here, the circle here, with another color. So I'll just pick this up here, and I'll go into something just for now. It'll go into something that's green, and I'll just hold on Control and click on this thumbnail here. Hold on Control and click on this thumbnail to do the selection of that layer, and I'm gonna do Alt Backspace. It's gonna fill that layer off. Alternatively, you can go over to Edit, Fill, and just click on the foreground color, which is this, the background color being white, in our case this. So I'll just click on foreground color and click on OK. It should do the same. Or you can go to the paint bucket tool and just tap that there. It should do everything as expected. So we are having this over here. We're actually having a clear understanding as to how our planet looks. This is not the final color, just for reference purposes only. So I'll just move this over here. Now I'll do 3 more duplicates of this, okay? Because now that this is just so small, I can just do 3 duplicates of this, and I'll just move them around so that we're having this little thing over here. So that now if I just move around something like this, you can actually see we're having some different kind of design altogether. So it's really handy to have something like that. So I'll just go in and then put it something like here. Just make sure that it's all centered in a way that it's not visible for our eyes to actually recognize that we actually altered it. So hold on everything here, and I'll click on Control key to make it a single layer. I'll rename it to 1. To never hide it, it's all a single layer. So it's really great to have something like this. So now what we'll do is I'll just keep it to the same size itself. And now one thing that we really need to do is hold on Alt to the keyboard, or you can right click and create a clipping mask. So what that is going to do, it's only going to affect the layer beneath it. So anything that you apply, the top layer, the one that is going to be applied, is only going to apply to the bottom layer. So it's not going to be affected on anything else. So that's really, really handy. So if I actually were to move the position of this, and if I do that, it's actually going to do the opposite. So the ellipse here is going to come inside that. So that is basically clipping here. So we need to, the shortcut for that is just hold on Alt and come in between where you want to clip him, and you can just click over that, and it should probably do what we are wanting to. So now that we have the first little shape here, we're going to do the second thing, which is this little here. I'll move this as well. Okay, don't worry about those real lines here. If you just zoom in, that is Alt and scroll in or out, you can actually zoom in into the canvas. So it should probably go away if you zoom in way too much. That's just Photoshop just getting mad at some things. And I'll just hide these two just so that I know what I'm doing. And in here I'll do this. Okay, this one is hidden, so we need to enable that. And now I'll move this one over here. I'll just reposition them just so that they're looking good and great. And now we're having the very first done here, very first set done here. Now I'll move the same thing for this as well. I'll probably put something like that, so it's not really in the same order as what it is. So now we're having some variation in the design itself. So holding on Shift, I'll select all these 3 layers, Control E, and I'll rename it to 2. Do the same thing, clip them, and it should be beneath the layer. So now we're not understanding what's happening, but it's still there. So we'll do the same thing for the last one, that is this one. So I'll do 2 more duplicates of that, and I'll just scroll up, and I'll just move this and reposition again so that we're having some really great looking design here. So I'll just do it with the arrow keys. So if you want more control, you can do it with the arrow keys rather than doing it from the mouse, because mouse sometimes doesn't really do its job. So now we're done with the third one as well. Hold on everything and Control E that, no, Control W, Control E, and I'll call this 3. So now I'll enable all these, and I'll clip that as well. So if I just take the move tool, shortcut for that is V, and if I just drag it, it should actually come into the circle itself. So we're actually having this here, but we can't actually see what's going on because all the 3 layers that we actually done here are white. So if I go over to the color schemes, we're having this website called Canva. If you did see the previous video, we actually had chosen the 5th number, which is a really great blend for doing designs like flat designs. So I'm gonna pick that here. If you don't know which one I'm actually working on, I'll just put in an image. So just make sure you're checking the previous video to understand what color schemes are, because that is really, really important, and you really need to understand what color schemes are. So for the planet itself, the ellipse here, I'm gonna pick up a color. So I'll hold on Control and click on the thumbnail here, and just click over that, and it should give you these little ants running around. That's basically that it is selected. I'll come over here to this little palette here and select that. Now I can change in the color, so I'll go into 003B46 is the color code, and if I just click on OK, and if I do Alt Backspace, which is alternatively the Paint Bucket tool or Edit Fill, you can actually go in and do Alt Backspace. Okay, it's not selecting the layer which you wanted to, so if you just come over here and select it, now it should actually work. So Alt Backspace, we're done with the very first circle here. Let me do that one more time because we're having that sharp little corners there. So just do that and we should be good to go. So the next thing we actually need to do is fill the second one, the lines, the long lines here. So I'll go in and change this again. Now come over and select that. I'll go over to 07575B. Now we're having a much lighter version of the very same color, and I'll just fill that off. If I just hold on Control, it should do the selection again. Click Alt Backspace and it should fill that up. Again, if you're seeing these real lines, you can do Alt Backspace again. It should probably fill it the right way. And the next thing we're actually going to do is select this one. Now I'll do Control again and click on that. Now what we need to do is select the color again. So for now, I'll do 66A5AD, and I'll click on OK and do Alt Backspace. So we're done with this. And one last thing we need to do is fill this itself. And for that, again, there's another color code, and it is going to be C4DFE6. And if I click on OK and do Alt Backspace, we're done with the basic color itself. So now you see it's looking great. Okay, if I rearrange them, it's going to look fantastic. So let me just do that right now. So I'll just move this a bit here. I'll go to the second layer, and I'll just make sure that it is actually sized up here. Okay, Control T, hold on Shift, and drag them out so that now it's sized up, so there's no really any blank space in the design itself. So we're good here. I'll just place that somewhere like here, and for the last one, I'll just move that and put that right somewhere there. So I'll just reposition this, and it should look all great. You know, it is going to look great. Okay, so now that we have the first planet here, it's looking great and all, but I'll just retweak this a bit, maybe just do something like that. Maybe the first one is going way to that side, so I'll just reposition them. It should look great. Okay, it should look great, and it is looking great. So now we're done with the first planet. What we need to do is I'll group everything. So now I'll select the bottom layer, the first layer, and hold on Shift and select everything. No, Alt G, not Control E. I'm sorry, Control G to group them, or you can just come over here and group them here, and you can just pull everything inside the group here, and it should do the same itself. So now if I just hide it and unhide it, it should probably work as expected. So now we're having the first planet. To add in some more detail, we're actually going to duplicate this. So I'm holding on Shift and dragging it down. Alternatively, do Control J, it should work as well. So now what we're going to do is I'll do Control T. Okay, so now it's going to bring up this free transform tool. So now you can size it up or down. So we'll hold on Shift as well as Alt. Now if I just hold on Shift, if I don't hold Shift, it's going to give us this random circle. But if I hold on Shift, it's going to select this as the anchor point. So that is something you need to keep in mind. So it's going to start sizing up from this point, so which we don't want it to. But if you want to size it up from the center, you can do Shift and Alt, and now you can center it from. You can size it from the center itself. So now we're done. Alt Backspace, just in case you went wrong. Alt Backspace. No, what is that? Control Z. I'm sorry. Control Z to undo any step you actually did. So I'll just do that, and we'll just take that. Now we'll do 2 more copies of this. Control T, hold on Shift, and I'll do it on something like that. And then for this one as well, I'll do Control Shift and Alt. I'm sorry, I'm getting the commands wrong, but just make sure that you're doing it the right way. So now that we have the 3 here, it's looking all dumb. It's looking dumb, I agree. But what we can do here is if I go in and change it to 50%, the second one, I'll put it to 30%. And for the third one, I'll put it to 10%. So now you see we're having this thing here. So what the opacity does is actually going to lower down the visibility of the layer. So if I set it to 0, it's actually going to be invisible. So if I set it to 100, it's going to be completely visible. This one it is. And if I set it to 0, it's going to go all gone. So I'll just put it to 50 for now. And for the second one, I'll put it to 30, and for the third one, we'll keep it to something like 20 so that it's still visible in here. So you can do as many circles as you want, but you just need to make sure that you're actually playing with the opacity values to get the right color. So just play with that, and we should have the first planet done. So this is the first planet. It's not looking all great. If you just rotate it to, or maybe around 15 degrees. So let me just hold on shift and rotate it. If I rotate it here, you can see it's going to do incremental rotations, which is really important. But there's a problem here because these three layers aren't inside the group. So if I hold on shift and select all these three and drag them inside the group, it should be in here. So now if I do Control T, hold on shift and drag it this side, it's going to do this 15-degree angle. So now we're done with the first planet itself. It's really looking good. Okay, now you can improve this. We'll do it with adding in some more stars and comets and all that. So it's gonna look awesome. So we're done with the first planet. We'll see you there once we're doing another set of planets. So yeah, this is done for now. I'll see you in the next video.